Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm sorry if the quality is a little different. I totally forgot my camera at home, but I wanted to show you guys how I set up for our Bird Beak Lab and how we do blackout poetry and science. And it makes it like super fun, something really different, something some of the kids have never done in any of their classes, let alone in science class. Very artistic. So let me take you around. I'm going to show you how we're doing our Bird Beak Lab today and our blackout poems. So we're still in our natural selection unit, and the way that we go through our natural selection unit, one of the things that we do is I read them this book. I know it's backwards. I'm so sorry. I'll try to fix it. It's called Beaks. And it's a really interesting book. I just tell them, hey, I'm gonna throw it back to when you guys were in elementary school. I'm gonna turn down the lights. I'm gonna read you a story. How do you feel about that? And almost everyone's like, yes, like they love that kind of thing. So I have the book Beaks, and it is so beautifully illustrated. I'll show you right now what it looks like inside, but this is basically going through and talking about adaptations and how birds have adapted, and their beaks in particular have adapted to get the kind of food that they need to survive. So I'll run through that with you right now. So here's the book called Beaks by Sneed Collard III, and I just go through, I literally stand right here and I kind of walk around and circulate throughout my room so that the students can all see the beautiful pictures of the book. And I tell them that I just read the top portion, so like birds use beaks to get food, but not all beaks work the same. Small beaks peck. And then I tell them if you want to know more about a certain bird, there's a whole bunch more information, but I'm just reading this top portion because we don't have time to read all the details. Heavy beaks crush, long beaks probe, and we just go through and look how beautiful these illustrations are. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous visual for how beaks do different things. Highly recommend. I got this off of Amazon and it's been a great purchase. So we start off by reading this story. Then we transition. Every unit that we have, we go through an anchor text. This one is by ReadWorks. ReadWorks is actually, you have to sign up for it, but a lot of their things are free once you sign up. And so this is one of the free articles when you sign up, and it's called Naturally Selected to Survive. And it just goes through the adaptation process. It talks about industrialization and how when pollution came in, it changed the bark of certain trees. And so then the white moths that used to thrive, now gray moths were thriving. And so it goes through all of this, and it's front and back. And then I tell them as we're reading, let me flip you. So then we have conversations, and I usually annotate like crazy. We circle vocabulary words. We highlight and underline things that lead to our main idea. We annotate in the margins things that are interesting, things that we have questions about. And this time when we read, we didn't do any of that. So the kids were already super excited. And I just told them, just listen, but with your pencil, circle words that you think might be really good in a poem. It doesn't even have to make sense. It doesn't have to be perfect, but circle words that you think are just interesting and could lead and be in a poem. So we go through, we read the first paragraph together, and I say, okay, take a second, circle those words. What's the main idea of this paragraph? What could you draw if you needed to draw something that represented this paragraph? And we could just kind of brainstorm. So we go through each of the paragraphs doing that. And then I say, okay, now what you're going to do is you are going to form a poem based on the words that you chose, or you can pick new words as well after you look around. Maybe you want to pick some new words, that's fine too. And so you are going to make a poem based on some of the words that you chose. If you need to add some ins and thes and ands and conjunctions, go ahead and do that to make your poem flow a little bit better. But now we're gonna make a poem, and I have to show them a lot of visuals, because for some kids they're like, yes, super easy, like I can just like make something out of, you know, out of this article and make it super interesting. And other students so struggle, and I tell them, sometimes ELA teachers are gonna get very upset at this. I say sometimes poems don't make sense. I know, don't quote me. And if you're an ELA, I have an ELA credential, so sorry to my own people, but I just tell them, you know what, there's deeper meanings, and if you can come up with a deeper meaning for why you chose the words that you chose, that's perfect. That's how it makes sense, but it's not always gonna just make perfect sense. So I show them examples from last year. I'll show you those right now. So I tell them that they can either choose a traditional blackout poem style that is like this, and they black everything out with a Sharpie that I provide, and they circle their words. Or they can do a combination where they black out some parts and then they color in other parts. Or if they just like color, they can do a full colored blackout poem, and just make sure that their words are circled. I also have on the whiteboard some examples of other blackout poems that I found on the internet. And so we go through that. At the end of reading the article, we brainstorm, okay, now that we've read the article, what does the article talk about? It talks about Ice Age, it talks about favorable traits, Earth and weather cycles, moth and adaptation, Industrial Revolution, pollution. It talks about all of these things. So any of your images that you decide to draw can have to do with one of those things. Now, these two articles were examples of blackout poetry from an article that has nothing to do with natural selection, so I tell them that as well. Like, you're not going to draw a whale. Our article has nothing to do with whales. And then I give them this checklist. Circle 5 to 10 words or phrases to create your own poem. Phrases cannot be more than 3 words long. Students love to circle whole sentences. I tell them, even though this is my example, I don't want whole entire sentences or anything longer than 3 words for your blackout poem. I say that you need to draw something that relates to your poem, black out the rest, and then on a flashcard, you're going to write all of this information. And so this is what the flashcard looks like. I tell them, write your poem, your name, period, date. I drew a blank to represent my poem. This picture relates back to natural selection because, so that's that. And I think I can find a finished product for you. Oh, I might have taken them out. Let's see. Here's one. Not that one. Trying to find one that I can just like not show you their name. Here's one. So here is a blackout poem that's done, and then let me cover their name. There we go. And so that's their poem, that's their name, and then that's why they drew what they drew. And then that's about it. All in all, it's a really fun activity. It's a really different activity for students that might not be used to having such creative freedom and taking something that's so analytical, like a scientific article, and breaking it down into poetry. But it's a really fun process, and by fun I mean completely infuriating for some kids, but it's really good to get some kids out of their comfort zone and just have them experience something like this. So that's how we do our final project for natural selection. Let me go into bird beaks. So we lay it out like this. We read the Bird Beak book. It's wonderful. Then we read the scientific article. Then we have the students start their blackout poems. I give about 3 to 4 days to finish and complete the blackout poem in class. A lot of students don't have Sharpies at home. I cannot have enough Sharpies for everyone to check out and take home. So sorry if the shadow's a little weird here, but we're gonna roll with it. But so I give them 3 to 4 days in class to finish their blackout poem, to finish their reflection and everything else. We take a break in between those 3 or 4 days and we do the Bird Beak Lab, and I'll show you how I set it up, and it's super fun. I'll even put a couple of clips in here of students actually like trying to do the Bird Beak Lab. It's great fun. Okay, so this is my setup. I just grabbed plastic lids from a bunch of book bins that I have in my classroom. I just took them off all of my book bins. You can use whatever works for you. My partner teacher literally just put everything on her table. She didn't even worry about putting it in a bin. I don't live that YOLO lifestyle, so I had to get a bin to put all of the materials in. You also need a bunch of baggies. I have 9 groups, 8 to 9 groups per class. So I just have 8 to 9 baggies full of, I call this the bird food. And we spread all of this out nice and neat. Not nice and neat, but I tell them make sure that there's no clumps. Like make sure that the strings are not clumped together. Make sure everything's kind of spread out a little bit so it's kind of even. I would even spread these out a little bit more. And so this represents bird food. You've got beans, string, little cotton swabs, and paper clips. And all of this represents different types of food, worms, fruits, just different kinds of fruit that birds might eat. Then each group has however many cups you need per people in my group. I have groups of 4, and then these cups represents a bird's stomach. So this is where all of the food will go. Notice how it says science only, because these are not for drinking. Please don't drink out of these cups. Anyway, so then there's 4 different kinds of birds. There's a fork bird. That is not the prettiest background, is it? Let's go here. There is a fork bird, a spoon bird, a binder clip bird, and I did popsicle sticks. There's a whole bunch of other kind of things. This is just what I had on hand. Some people use chopsticks. I didn't have enough chopsticks for everybody. So that's what I have. And then you have the 4 cups. And so what you do is, so for my students, this worksheet came from my district. If I can find out if I can share it with you, I will down below. But for this worksheet, they wanted spoons, tweezers, binder clips, and just 3 things. So we took out the tweezers for forks, we added sticks, and as the kids were walking in, I just had this Post-it note right here saying, come in and make these changes to your lab paper. And then I told the students that they had to pick which bird they wanted to be. They had to pick which bird they wanted to be. This one doesn't have to be broken, it just was, and I went with it. They pick which bird they want to be, and then they circle in trial 1 and 2 and 3 which bird they want to be. For data's sake, you want them to stay and be, oh, forgot binder clip bird, and stay and be the same kind of bird so that their data can be as consistent as possible. And so then they make predictions. Which type of bird is going to get the most paper clips, string, cotton swabs, or beans? What kind of bird will get the most? And then I tell them make sure that your bird stomach is as close to you as possible. And when I say go, you are going to try to put as much food, it doesn't matter what kind of food, whatever food is easier for you to grab, put as much food with your beak into your stomach as possible.
That's nasty.
Hey.
Oh wait, it went into another stomach. Wait.
Oh, it's over.
And it's over! Food right there. Okay, I digress. So put as much food into your bird's stomach as possible. I only give them 30 seconds. If you give them a lot more material, you might be able to stretch it out to a minute. I might have been able to stretch it out to a minute, but I feel like 30 seconds is good. They get as much food as possible, and then they stop at 30 and they count how many of each types of food that they have. And we do this 3 times, and then we get an average of how much food each of the birds got, and we just have a discussion about it. What beak worked for which food? Why do you think that is? If these were real birds on an island that only had beans, which birds would survive? Which birds would die off? Which birds might have to migrate to another place? So we have really good discussions. There's some questions that I ask and that they write down the answers to. This is great for science notebooks as well. And we just go from there. And it's been really fun, really exciting. The kids really like it because it's kind of a competition. I was really proud of my kids. I was worried about a couple of kids maybe like throwing the stuff or, you know, just those teacher worries, but I was very like, look at the floor, there's nothing on the floor, we're gonna pick everything up, we're gonna be really good stewards of what we have, we're gonna be super mature, and they were. You just have to set those expectations right away. So that's my little share for today. I know this video is kind of a lot shorter than normal, but I wanted to show you Bird Beak Lab and our blackout poems. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.